Greetings, Queen V Line, back to you with another video. This video pertains to a family of 5. It involves a mother and her 4 children by the name of Kamisha Wright, Commander Smith, Charlie Smith, Rafaela Smith, and Kishan Henry. You will watch a brief clip and I will be back with my commentary.
While he appeared before the Home Circuit Court this afternoon. However, details of the application were not disclosed. Our coverage begins with Raquel Porter.
Roshane Barnett appeared in court via voluntary bill of indictment, which allows for his case to bypass a parish court hearing. He is currently without an attorney. Legal representation is expected to be settled for the 23-year-old man before his next appearance on July 22. A psychiatric evaluation was also ordered by presiding Judge Justice Leighton Pusey. Mr. Barnett is implicated in the killing of 31-year-old Kamisha Wright, 15-year-old Kimanda Smith, 12-year-old Shirley Smith, 5-year-old Raphael Smith, and 23-month-old Kishan Henry Jr. Their bodies, which had chop wounds and the throats slashed, were discovered at the family's house in New Road, Chapelton in Clarendon last Tuesday. Mr. Barnett fled to Ulster Spring, Trelawney, where he was later apprehended. Mr. Barnett is a cousin of the victims. Raquel Porter, TVJ News.
Now, here to give us more information about the notice of death penalty is our legal analyst, Dion Jackson Miller. Dion, welcome. All right, first of all, does this notice mean that Roshane Barnett will be put to death? We've been getting that question since news broke.
I can imagine, and I know this is a terrible, terrible case. The entire country has been in shock and in mourning over it, but I do think it's very important to say that we do need to allow the legal process to play itself out. So at this stage, we can't say what is going to happen at the end of the day, whether in fact there will be the death penalty or not. What we can say is that this notice of death penalty by the Office of the DPP is a legal requirement, and that if the notice is not filed, then there is no prospect of successfully seeking the death penalty. We actually had a 2012 case in the Court of Appeal, Jeffrey Perry. That was another tragic case in which 3 children were slaughtered. In that case, they were 4, 13, and 15 years of age. They were his cousins, in fact, and he stabbed them to death. He was sentenced to death, but when it went to the Court of Appeal, it was acknowledged that the DPP's office had not filed a notice of death penalty, and as a result, the Court of Appeal said that effectively took the death penalty off the table.
So the appeal is necessary if you plan to do that down the road?
The notice is absolutely necessary if you
right.
plan to go ahead and ask for the death penalty.
So why haven't we seen more calls for the death penalty over the years then, if this is just the basic requirement?
We have, there's a whole series of cases and amendments to laws and so on that have taken place. The last execution in Jamaica was February 1988. After that, Jamaica effectively had a 20-year moratorium in which we didn't have any death penalty, any executions taking place. Now, in 2009, Jamaica's parliament had a vote on whether to abolish the death penalty and voted to retain it. But then in 2009 also, the Privy Council ruled in a case called Trimmingham. This was a case in which an accused had killed a farmer in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, had been sentenced to death, had appealed the sentence. And what the court said in Trimmingham was that the death penalty was reserved for what they called cases which were the worst of the worst, the rarest of the rare, the most extreme and the most exceptional. And they said that Trimmingham didn't fall into that category. They said it was a bad case of murder for gain, but that it could not be compared with the cases, the worst cases of sadistic killings. So they said you had to have a situation where the person can't be reformed, he's incapable of reform, where the aim of sentencing can only be achieved by the sentence of death. And in that situation, they said it didn't fall into that category. It's an extremely high bar. And I have been in the Court of Appeal where appeals against death sentences were being argued based on Trimmingham. And I remember one of the judges said, so you're saying practically it's almost impossible then to execute someone? And counsel said, well, based on Trimmingham, it is very, very difficult.
Okay. Well, I know it's all before the courts right now, but how do you see it playing out in this case?
And again, going back to what I said earlier, exactly that point, Herman, we have to allow it to play out. You know, when the accuser appears on the next occasion on the 22nd of July, he's at that point going to be assigned counsel. So at this point, he doesn't even have a lawyer yet. Counsel will talk to him about the death penalty notice and give advice as to what he should do in those circumstances. The court has also ordered that.
As of July 3rd, 2022, the suspect now has an attorney. I repeat, as of July 3rd, 2022, the suspect does have an attorney, and his new court date has been changed to July 28th, 2022. Again, the alleged suspect now has an attorney, and his court date has been moved to July 28th, 2022. So let's get back to the victims at hand, because at the end of the day, Miss Wright and her 4 children are no longer here. A whole generation is wiped out at the hands of their cousin, allegedly. The reason why I'm using the word allegedly is this is an ongoing investigation, and we must allow the law to handle its course. However, if the evidence does prove that their cousin did this horrific crime, Jamaica needs to return and or implement the execution. As you've heard, the last execution on the island occurred in 1988. If Jamaica fails Miss Wright and her 4 children, this will open the floodgates to other criminals that I can violate my cousin, I can violate my mother, I can violate my cousins and my nieces and my nephews and whomever, because they allowed this quote-unquote criminal, allegedly, to walk free. Jamaica, the world is watching you. When I first heard of this crime, it made me pause, because it was not a stranger who violated Miss Wright and her 4 children. It was allegedly her own family. There is a saying, it's not the monsters outside that you must be aware of, but it's the monsters you allow in. There have been allegations that the suspect owed money to the victim and refused to pay his cousin. So how does he repay his cousin? He took her life and her children's lives. A whole generation who could have been prime ministers, officers, judges, teachers, CEOs. The world of opportunities are no longer available to these 4 children and their mother. It is ironic that when these persons commit these crimes, they always find a way to leave the scene of the crime and go somewhere else. Don't get me wrong, mental illness, mental health is a serious thing, because we have suffered enough since this pandemic has come into place since 2020, and it has exposed all of us in ways that we cannot imagine. And for this suspect to do the unthinkable to his family lets me know that he did not care about his family in the first place. And I also want this story to be a cautionary tale, that if you see a relative acting weird around you and they're getting violent and they're getting aggressive towards you and or towards your children, it is best that you talk it out. Meaning, You tell other neighbors and family members. That way, if any harm does come, they can all say it was this person or that person. How can you violate your cousin who is sheltering you, who is ensuring that you are being taken care of? She could have told you no, but she loves you enough for you to not only be in her space, but her children's space. And this is the thanks. My God, when are we going to understand that these monsters are among us? They are considered relatives, partners, and even friends. I hope and I pray that this family gets justice. And I hope that the system does not fail Miss Wright and her children. Because if they do, I repeat once again, this will lead the floodgates for other criminals to say that I can violate my cousin, I can violate my partner, I can violate my children or other relatives because I cannot get my way. I want us to continue to pray for this family. I want us to pray for this community and pray for Jamaica. We will say their names because at the end of the day, we have to protect the future. We have to protect our women and we have to protect our children because this can no longer be silence. Silence is no longer an excuse. Say their names. Black Lives Matter. And I will see you in the next video. God bless.